We're back with Close-Up, and our guests today are the candidates for the House District 140 seat, Lauren Benedict, the Democrat, and Alan Freeman, the Republican. And let's switch gears for a moment. This past year, the General Assembly enacted some sweeping sexual predator laws, but they're tied up in the courts because of constitutional questions over provisions. Things such as offenders can't live within 1,000 feet of a school bus stop, and offenders can't live within 1,000 feet of churches except when services are being conducted. What are your thoughts on that, Ms. Bennett?
Well, I certainly support getting tough on crime and making sure we get, when someone commits especially a crime against a child, that they are prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. But there are some problems with that legislation, and that's what happens when you rush something through and you have an inexperienced leadership. Some of the problems are it's an unfunded mandate. Again, this time it's on our local law enforcement officers who are working so hard to make sure that we have a safe community, and now they're being asked to collect fines and fees and send that money straight on back to the Capitol, not keep it even though they've expended their resources. And what I'm also concerned about, some of the things you mentioned, not living within 1,000 feet of a school bus stop. When you have a very populated county, such as the Metro Atlanta County and other counties in other parts of our state, there's nowhere to live, and so that's going to drive sex offenders to rural parts of the county. And I'm very concerned for places like South Jones, Twiggs, and Wilkinson, that we're going to have an influx of sexual predators because they can't live anywhere else. So I think there's some problems with that legislation.
Mr. Freeman?
You know, I make no apologies about this piece of legislation. I was the second signer and sponsor of this piece of legislation, and pretty familiar with it. It was an all-encompassing. It looked at several different areas of law to incorporate what we came up with, and when we change that many changes, you don't know what effect it may have. But you know, I've talked to all of our local and county officials that deal with law enforcement, and they all say it makes us a safer place and it protects our children. And those are things that I wanted to do when co-sponsoring this piece of legislation. I'm real proud that we are taking sexual predators, and if not getting them off of our streets, getting them out of our state. And that was definitely part of what the legislation was all about. And I make no apologies about protecting our children.
You said you discussed it with law enforcement. Law enforcement is pretty much opposed to this.
That's right.
You know, they are opposed to it because they have to work harder, but their job is to protect and serve, and all of them that I've talked to and in the other counties agree with me that we are making it safer. And I talked last night to one of the sex offender officers that have been assigned to this duty, and he says we are much better off for having this piece of legislation. In fact, wants to make it even stricter, and I'll be working with them to do that.
You know, it concerns me that Mr. Freeman says when you pass broad legislation, you don't know all the effects. You need to work to know the effects before you put something like that into place. And law enforcement in our community is working hard, and for him to come here today and say they don't like it because it makes it work harder, that's an affront to all of our hardworking law enforcement officers in this community.